exactly, because we're humans. We're all people just trying to get along in this world, doing the best we can most of the time. And so you always want to assume positive intent. But and you can think you know people forever, and then suddenly, oh my gosh, where did that come from?
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
And you've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Today, I'm talking with Janifer Wheeler. She's the creator of the Joyfully Badass Business Academy. She transitioned from teacher to entrepreneurship, public speaker, and a best-selling author. How are you doing today, Janifer?
I am great, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you for joining us. I know you're super busy, and we very much appreciate your time. Before we jump into the episode, can you introduce yourself to the audience and a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am Janifer Wheeler, as you stated, and it is Janifer, Janifer. And I live in Austin, Texas, where I am a teacher turned entrepreneur, and I focus specifically on productivity, e-learning, ways to help small business owners begin to streamline some processes and find more time, money, freedom, and joy in their businesses. Because I don't know about y'all, but I did not become an entrepreneur so I could work more than I did as someone's employee.
Fantastic. And e-learning is such a big gap in a lot of businesses, and training in general for small to medium-sized businesses is always, I don't think I've ever talked to an entrepreneur that ran a small business or even a medium-sized business and said, oh yeah, our training is phenomenal, everybody's trained. And when I talk to a lot of employees of different companies, almost everybody's like, oh, I wish I had more training. I wish I had more training. I wish I had more training. So I think e-learning is a great topic to dive right into. But you haven't always been an entrepreneur. You said you were an elementary school teacher. You said something about not 10-year-olds, which I'm very familiar.
Yeah.
I teach boxing, and I have a 10-year-old class that is a uniquely different class. 10-year-olds are different. They're in a different mindset than...
They are very different. And I've taught every elementary grade, but fourth is my favorite because they're kind of like beginning to realize that the world is bigger than they are, and they're fairly fascinated by it. So,
Right.
You know, there's a lot of fun conversations, but teaching is absolutely, in my opinion, the most physically, emotionally, and mentally demanding job I've ever had.
Right.
And I mean, even being an entrepreneur is not nearly the just life-sucking thing that teaching is. And, you know, that's
It can be fulfilling. It's not all bad. It can be wildly fulfilling as well.
Not all bad, right? I love the kids. They were always fun. I love their families. You know, that was really fun. Those
Right.
parts were great. But unfortunately, when you work for other people, you don't get to pick the parts that you like the most.
Right.
Or that you're, you know.
When you can't
that
outsource the
jazz-
parts you don't like if you're an employee, right? If you're the manager,
No.
you can outsource that piece. So now you made a pretty big change in career, you know, trajectory completely. You went from school teacher to entrepreneur, and there's a lot of people that are in that boat. Not that I'm saying that, you know, the world needs more teachers. So if you're suited to be a teacher,
Definitely.
do your time as a teacher, please. We need as many great teachers
need
as we
teachers.
can in this country. But if you're burnt out, you feel toxic, you feel like all those things, how can you tell your story about how you made that transition from school teacher to entrepreneur, so maybe it can help some other people that are thinking about making that transition and go through that story?
Well, obviously, at first, I just had to get out of there. So I spent about a year just kind of regrouping, figuring out what I needed to do, like, who am I? Because I think a lot of times we take steps, we engage in actions that are just sort of expected without a lot of thought around, is this really what I want to do? And so when I got, you know, out of the classroom, I obviously had the summer and was lucky enough to have about another year. And it just took me some time to figure out, like, if I don't want to do this, what do I want to do? And I'm a firm believer that often if you can figure out what you don't want to do or what you don't want, then it leaves room to explore what you do want or what you could want. And so that's what I started doing. I just got involved with some networking groups, just began to kind of slowly get involved with people outside of education and learn kind of what could I do with my skills? Like, I thought, okay, I can only be a teacher. Well, it's still a teacher. I mean, I'm a teacher in my heart and soul, but I was lucky enough to get a position teaching adults in the school district, where then I created a parent university, a training model for adults. And it was like, oh, wow, I've got the gift of teaching. It's not exclusively for children or people who are, under the age of 11. I could really teach and train and help anyone. So that really was the catalyst for me to begin to create a more adult focused business model. And it took me a while to figure out what my niche was going to be, where what really made sense for me. And prior to teaching, I worked in many small businesses, helping them get structure put in place, documenting all their policies and procedures, doing their training. So I did all that for a daycare with about 40 employees for 6 or 7 years prior to full-time teaching. So it just made sense to me to take the things that I was already good at and figure out a way to package all of that and help other people. So, I'm really about productivity. And for me, productivity is kind of eliminating the steps that might be obstacles, or trying to, go around that to get to where you want to be. And I do that with e-learning. I do that with the consulting that I offer. So it was a difficult transition. I have had many instances where I'm like, why did you do this? but, but again, I know what I can do, and I've learned in the last 6 months even more what I can do. My husband had 3 major spinal surgeries from September to November, and it's been interesting over here. And thank goodness that I have a digital business, that I understand my own joy and productivity. So I was able to offload so many things to my assistant and focus on my husband. I said to him numerous times, if I was still teaching, there's no way I could have taken off, basically 6 months to help you recover from these, major surgeries.
Right.
So again, freedom, flexibility.
Right. So you take, anytime that you can take knowledge from 2 different sectors, and you took, your business administration and teaching, the joys from both of those things, buckled them together to create a new product and service for the world to enjoy. And I think that
Correct.
small business is so important to me personally. I love Main Street America. I love the brick and mortar businesses. It's really important for our country to continue to grow and strive. So I know that in that position, small business owner, Main Street America, they're working in their business. They've got a lot of things going on. They're dealing with the bank. They're dealing with payroll. They're dealing with landlord. They've got all of this stuff going on.
Right.
And they know that if they can teach somebody else some of these things, that it would take something off their plate. But they don't know how to get started, right? So if somebody is in that boat, like, man, I really need to figure out how to train somebody else for this. Do you have any tips for them on how to even take that first step to, okay, I need to start documenting something. I need to be able to transition other people into this workforce. How do they get started with that? Because I think that's, once you get started, you can kind of keep going, but that getting started with it is really, really challenging sometimes.
I agree. And I think what I would recommend is, first of all, just in the process that I teach people, is kind of like, take a big look at your business. Many people are familiar with Marie Kondo and how she tells you to dump all your stuff out on your bed or on your floor and kind of go through it and determine what sparks joy. And that is what I advocate for business owners. Get all those tasks and actions out of your head and onto some kind of paper. Then decide, what of these things can only I do? Because I can only write curriculum I can write curriculum. My assistant is not a curriculum writer. If I need help with that in the future, I will need to hire a curriculum writer. So I think it really is valuable to start with, what are you currently doing? And then evaluate it for the level of joy and for the level of only I can do it. Because even if it's not joyful, if only you can do it, you're still going to have to deal with it. But you can find other ways to make it more enjoyable. And I do advocate for that as well.
Yeah, one of my biggest frustrations is things that aren't very efficient, inefficiencies, right? I hate it. It drives me insane. And
Yeah.
I'm getting better at communicating my frustrations than I used to be, but removing those inefficiencies is the easiest way to remove my frustration. So I think that
Exactly.
that is really important. In our pre-interview, you said something about how you create training, and you create it in a micro e-learning. Can you tell us a little
Correct.
bit about what do you consider, like, what is micro e-learning versus a macro e-learning, and why is that important? And then how do you execute that makes it special?
So macro learning is the traditional workshop format, right? It could be an hour, it could be 2. Regardless, you have been pulled away from something that you might need to be doing in order to receive this training. You know, in the teaching field, you're often, doing it on days when you're not even supposed to be working. So technically you're doing it for free. And that's not fun. That no one wants to learn things that are not relevant or they're not getting paid for. So the first thing I say about e-learning is that it must be relative. It has to be applicable to the person's job role. You cannot create training. Well, you can, but it's not effective. And if people don't understand why this is important and why they need it, then sure, they'll do it if you tell them to, but it's not going to be effective. And so really the point was lost. The reason I like micro learning is because it doesn't take an hour. It takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I've been building micro libraries for small business owners, and the average is 1 to 3 minutes. So we create tons of mini models. So basically you're taking, like, say, an hour and breaking it up into 6, 8, 10 points, and then just honing in on those points. So, as much as a story can be really great in a training to, build trust and kind of like break the ice, there are a lot of people who are like, yeah, get to the point because I got stuff to do. And that's kind of what I want to help people eliminate is if you want to share your personal story, do it. But in a training situation, that's really not necessarily relevant.
Right.
Right. So I feel that honing in on those big juicy nuggets, right? When I'm teaching kids to read, it's really not relevant what my opinion is on all these different books I've read. I need to hone in and teach you how to do that particular skill. And that's what we need to do when we're creating e-learning training for our, as a potential income stream. And then subsequently, if you are onboarding and training employees, you hired them to do a job. They want to do it and they want to do it well, but they also don't want to be in hours and hours of training. And why would you want to do that? Because they can't do their jobs. It's such a disconnect, right? So I really advocate for micro training where you just hone in on the juiciest nuggets. And that really is an area of expertise for me. And that's how I taught kids for a long time. That's how I've taught adults. That really is my philosophy around education. It's really great for business owners because it is small. People can go back to it over and over again. If someone is working and they say, oh, what am I supposed to do when I get done with this document? Am I supposed to email it? The micro learning, they just go right back to that 1 minute thing, 5 minute thing. Oh, let me just go watch this little video. I'll remind myself how to do that particular task. Because also when we train people, we're training them for things that they may not even encounter for months in the future. So really, right, micro learning allows for that just-in-time learning, right? We've got something that just popped up. We need to train everybody on it. You right. can make micro learning so much faster than those long-ass workshops. Like, nobody wants that. We just want right. what we need right now in this minute. And attention spans are significantly shorter than they used to be. Micro learning is perfect for that. So I use a text-based model, and it's through a company called Arist. I get nothing from them by promoting them, but they deliver all their trainings via text message. How cool is that? I'm at my desk. I could go in, I could just go back through my text and be like, okay, I could search my text thread for right. how to submit an email and pop up right there on my phone. Or they can obviously be stored online. You can access them wherever. Learning management systems, there's a lot of different right. choices and options out there, but the micro training is the way to go. It's short. And I'm telling you, you do right. not have to pay people. Like, instructional designers that create these gamifications. There's nothing wrong with those, but they take hours and hours and hours to develop. And you have to be very expert in these. So, if you want to save money and do something that fits within your budget, I think micro learning is the way to go.
Absolutely. I love micro learning. I think it's really, really important. I teach two different kinds of things, right? I teach boxing, which is very, a lot of subjectivity and nuance in it. And we do long form and we do the stories and all that stuff. But in IT, there's no room for subjectivity. It's absolutely, this is the way you do it. And that micro training on demand, search for the result, get the quick little video that shows you how to do it, or the step-by-step tutorial. I think those things are, we have a new guy started today, and literally he's like, once I know how to do everything, I'm like, well, get in the mindset of you're never going to know how to do everything, but you know how to find what you need to do when you need to do it, and you know how to do that quickly, and then follow those directions, and that will solve 80% of your problem. I think the other thing that I run into a lot, and I'd like to hear your input on how you overcome this. Standard operating procedures are the standard. They're not the granite written in stone. And it is so hard for people to understand, or at least I found that it's really hard for me to communicate that, hey, these are the standards. These aren't the way it's going to work 100% of the time. But and I say 80-20 rule, but it's really more like 95-5, right? This works 95% of the time. There's this 5% of nuance over here that you might have to put a ticket in and then do some extra research. How do you overcome that with micro learning without telling that story of, hey, if this happens, then you have to do this other standard operating procedure, or you got to call it out? How do you communicate that to the people that are taking the micro learning? Because people take what they're taught a lot of times as, hey, this is fact. This is the way the world is. And it's just not always that way.
No, and that's very true. And I think if you can anticipate it, so I am someone who, brainstorms all kinds of I guess my brain sort of works in that flow chart sort of way. Okay, here's the question. If the answer is no, you do this. If the answer is yes, you do this. This is that kind of thing. So in some ways, you can anticipate what could potentially be something to know about. But then you're just giving people possible problems. So that is an option. I don't know if it's really the best one, but because micro learning can be made so quickly, you could almost get something turned out almost immediately to help people navigate something that's unusual. But if you've got 95% of your stuff documented, easily accessible, it's pretty much the standard, and that weird 5% shows up. I mean, those are things that you can manage and handle in the moment, because weird shit happens when you're an entrepreneur, and you can't always anticipate all of that.
Nope.
So you just can't. I mean, I worked with a small client who had someone, everything's all trucking along. Well, she let someone go and then didn't take their key, so they came back and did some stuff. So that made us create a new policy, some new training. When you leave, get the people's keys or change the lock immediately. So sometimes you just have to roll with it and be like, oh crap, well, that's different. And then create something around that. So if it ever happens again, you now have a policy, a procedure, a process, something. Because who anticipated that this girl who'd worked there for 3 years would ever bring her key back up? No one thought that. And so no reason to think it. But, we're all humans. We do weird things. Our brains sometimes, get ahead of us and stuff happens. So I think too, you just have to be super flexible, right? And just say, does this warrant a training, or does it just warrant a policy adjustment? And we're just going to roll that out and say, hey, remember when we didn't take people's keys? Well, now we are. Do not let anybody walk out of here without getting their key back. Or if they don't get it back, tell somebody so we can change the laws.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. So everything, like I said, who would think of that?
Now,
I I wouldn't do that.
No, it happens though. And I mean, in IT, we definitely know that there's a lot of policy around access control, and it's really, really important. And, unfortunately, we spend a lot of time with our employees. We build this trust, friendship. I spend as much time with my staff as I do with my wife and my kids, right? So it becomes a family, a weird, it's it's a weird place to live, right? But it's fun, so we keep doing it.
Because we're humans. We're
Right.
all people just trying to get along in this world, doing the best we can most of the time. And so you always want to assume positive intent.
Right.
But, and you
Yeah.
can think you know people forever, and then suddenly, oh my gosh, where did that come from?
Yes.
So, you just have to be, I think, you just have to be able to roll with it and determine, is this actually something we need to be trained on?
Right.
Which I think is more about policies and procedures, right? We need to understand the rules and the governance of this place. And then we need to understand, where do I and my role fit into, the overall of this organization? Like,
right.
How am I supposed to do my job here?
Yes.
So,
Now, Yep. Now you put together some packages for the audience, and if somebody wanted to work with you, how would they get in contact with you? And can you tell us a little bit about some of the giveaways that you have on your website?
So what I have now is I'm at janiferwheeler.com, and I do consulting. So you can reach out, set up a call, discovery call. We can talk about if you need training support. I do have an online or text-based microlearning that will be released later in March, early April, specifically for creating microlearning. So if you want to get in on that, you certainly could, just by signing up at my website. I've got some set a call. You can access some free courses. I do have some free courses on there. They primarily cover burnout and joyful productivity and what that is. I have one coming soon on delegation. So, I've been a busy bee over here, just writing curriculum, thinking about what people need. So honestly, you could just reach out, set up a call, send me an email. I'm really easy to access in that way. And I just really want people to feel more efficient and productive, because you can't even digitize things and automate them if you don't know what the steps are. So understanding all of your processes and things like that, what you do to serve your clients and customers, you really need to be writing that down. And you don't have to go sit down and write it down, but as you're doing it, make some notes. What is your process? What do you start with? What is the first thing you do? Or, as I like to think, what is the end goal? And then go backward through the steps that it takes. So instead of starting with one, it could be easier to say, okay, I want people to do X, Y, Z. What do they need to do to make that happen? And then kind of work backwards. You could go either way.
Right. Today, my tip on micro learning today, and it's so much easier today than it's ever been, because we've got a camera, we've got screen recorders, we've got all that stuff, is little micro videos and put them up in your intranet or a little WordPress website. Exactly. Or even you could put them on a private YouTube channel, right? These little micro videos are super handy.
The options for learning management systems or storing this training are almost as limitless as what you could create in the training itself.
Absolutely.
So, I think whatever works for people is where you store it, wherever it's best for your people.
Right.
But,
so
I love creating micro learning libraries.
I'm going to throw you a curveball here and talk a little bit about mindset. I saw one word inside of your bio whenever I was reading through it that I really enjoy talking about, and that word is manifestation. And you put that in your bio. So I would just like to ask you, what does manifestation mean to you, and how do you execute that in your life?
So for me, manifestation is staying connected to myself. And I am a little woo-woo, so I definitely work from my intuition. And I'm very connected to that. So I do a lot of... Is that the
technical term, woo-woo?
Yeah, that's the technical term. It's an industry standard term, the woo-woo. But a lot of people, like to call it that. But for me, I stay connected with my intuition. I do that through journaling. I just do that through some practices that I commit to. I follow moon cycles, so I got a little witchy vibe over here. But for the most part, it just helps me stay connected and grounded to who I am. And as long as I am doing that, then things do manifest, because I'm in the right energy. I'm putting out the right energy. I'm receiving the right energy. So I just like to make sure that I'm checking in with myself on a regular basis. Where am I? I do make goals, but I don't stress over them, because I did that and it made me nuts, and I can't do that anymore. So I'm a big believer in doing what is right for yourself. so that you don't find yourself in a burnout situation. I was in managing burnout and those kinds of things is far beyond like soaking in the bathtub and having a glass of wine. You have to be very intentional. And I think that's another way that I manifest in intentionality. You know, I don't just randomly, willy-nilly go out into the world. I typically have a, you know, a point or a purpose. And I think that also helps.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time today, Janifer. I had a blast talking to you. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience before we go?
If it's not joyful, why do it?
Absolutely. And if you're doing stuff that you don't like to do, start making changes today. Looking for opportunities and things like that. It is so important.
There's all kinds of people out there who are just waiting to help you.
Yes.
They really are. They're just like, I am here for you. I've got your back. And I'm one of those people. And I know there are many, many more, including yourself. You have this program so that you can help people look for new ways, new avenues, find different, you know, mindsets or ways to approach problems. And I think that is extremely valuable, especially right now. We just.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That's it for today's show, folks. Again, if you want to get into micro learning, reach out to Janifer. She's there. It's JaniferWheeler.com. That's it for today's show. If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. All you have to do to join that line is ask me any question about business or technology. I will do the research and give you an unbiased, absolutely free answer. That's it for today. Get to work.